What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Drive Show. And on this episode, I'm actually reviewing the Ford Everest Wildtrak. And believe you me, this car is a really wild SUV. It packs a 3-liter V6 diesel engine that's putting down some reasonable power. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about the power and handling at the end of the video. But for now, let's just talk about how stealthy and how handsome this car is. This right here is the next gen Everest, and Ford has definitely brought up one of their big guns to fight on the SUV category. So this comes in 4 different variants, being the XLT, the Sport, the Wildtrak, and the Platinum, all in which share the same chassis with just different cosmetic updates there and there. But today I'm looking at the king of the jungle, the wildest on the pack, the Wildtrak, and I decided to take this out in the wild, and one thing I'll tell you, it fits right in. The front end design features the Ford Global DNA design grille with the bolder grey accents, and not forgetting the all new C-clamp LEDs. These daytime running lights just look menacing. They definitely draw your attention to the boxy front end design that looks so muscular and definitely American. Now, one of the features on the front end design that honestly just added the cherry on top for me specifically are those LED front fog lamps. A lot of these manufacturers just decide to put halogen lamps on the fog lights because a lot of people don't really turn those on. But somebody at Ford decided, you know what, just give them the LEDs, which just makes the front end design a 10 out of 10. Now, moving over to the side profile, you can definitely tell that this is related to the previous generation Everest because the silhouette of this chassis is pretty much the same as the previous gen when you're looking at the side profile. It's a really chunky car though. One thing that stands out on this specific Wildtrak is that this has the 18-inch aluminum alloy all-terrain wheels instead of the 20-inch that comes stock with the Wildtrak. Now, the rear end design is honestly not far off from the previous generation, but I really love how modernized and how futuristic the taillights look, and they join in this glass-like finish with the text Everest there at the back there. And if you can recall, even the previous generation kind of had some similar features. And that's all I could say about the exterior. If you really like the exterior, you're most probably going to love how the interior looks as well, because the design language used on the exterior is pretty much transferred to the interior as well. And I love how Ford has added a little bit more luxury into this modern interior, but still not losing the Wildtrak identity. This car still looks rugged in here, and it still feels like you're in a Wildtrak. And let's talk a bit more about the interior. Now, the first thing that stands out when you get to the interior are these Wildtrak embroidered leather seats. These seats are massive, generally made for people much taller than me, but I also didn't feel uncomfortable sitting in this regardless of how big they actually are. And thanks to Ford, not only the driver's seat can be electronically controlled, but also the front passenger seat. Everybody else has to move their seats manually though, so if you're sitting at the back or on the third row, you gotta have to move those things manually. Now, enough about the seats, we're gonna get over to the tech, and I know you guys have definitely noticed this dramatic ambient lighting. It just adds a tad more luxury to this interior. Now that, paired with an 8-inch digital gauge cluster, a 12-inch portrait infotainment screen that is not only touchscreen but has Bluetooth, navigation, wireless CarPlay, and Android Auto. So when it comes to technology, we can all agree that this car is definitely charged up with the latest technology. Talking about charging, there's so many charging options or charging sockets in this car, including the interior mirror side USB-A port, the front console USB-A, C, and a 12-volt charging socket, including the wireless charging pad. Moving on to the second row, that has a USB-A, a USB-C as well, and an AC socket which takes up to 400 watts. This means that you can charge your portable gadgets such as your laptop. Now, the third row only has a 12-volt power socket, and the rear cargo also only has the 12-volt power socket. Besides all those charging ports and all this technology that's in this car, I actually love that Ford considered a whole lot of other stuff to make your life a lot easier in this interior. One of the most overlooked feature in this interior that a lot of people don't seem to mention is the fact that the glove box has a cable gap. that allows you to not pinch your cables when you're charging in the glove box. We all end up pinching our wires or our phone chargers or phone cables when you're charging in the glove box, and I love that Ford considered this when making this interior. Another thing I love is that the sun visor can maneuver from left to right to actually block the correct spot from blinding you, which is actually quite a cool feature. I've seen this on other cars as well, but I love that this is also in this car. The one feature that everybody appreciates is that you only need one hand to open the door, and this is how you kind of do it. Overall, I think the interior of this car is a really great place to be, and I generally believe you can fit 7 adults in this car. And of course, on the rear seat or the third row, you're gonna have to move the second row a bit forward to be able to squeeze in some short adults at the back. Moving right on to the back, the boot space is only 296 liters with all the 3 rows up, or if you fold the third row, you get about 898 liters of boot capacity. Now moving over to the performance, the Wildtrak and the Platinum being the top variants, they have the 3-liter V6 turbo diesel engine that pushes about 184 kilowatts and 600 newton meters of torque, and all that is being driven by a 10-speed automatic gearbox. Taking that and pairing it with Ford's all-terrain management system, which uses the next-gen EMTC, allows you to have 4 drive modes. By default, the drive mode set is for automatic, labeled as 4A, which the car decides whether to use 4 high or 4 low, depending on your current terrain, which is pretty cool because you don't have to change around and fidget around with these driving modes when you don't fully understand what they do. You can still manually decide what drive mode you'd like by selecting 2 high, which just engages the rear wheels, 4 high, which gives you the power at the top end on all 4 wheels. You can actually use this when you're driving around like mud, rug, or slippery roads, or you can put it at 4 low to get yourself out of a rocky or really patchy area where you need the power on the low end to just drive out of a rocky area. The overall ride quality of the Everest is actually quite impressive. For a 7-seater that is an all-rounder that can go off-road as well, it's actually impressive of how good the ride quality is. One thing you actually need to get used to when you're getting into such cars is how high you sit up in these cars. But other than that, the ride quality was impressive in this car. Now, before I get to the price of the car, I just want to talk about the fuel consumption. So Ford claims that this averages about 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers. But, I was really testing this car and going off-roading a lot. So my average was 12.5 liters per 100 kilometers. That was a whole chunk of diesel I kept on pouring in this car. With this year being a new year, I decided to do something different. I'm going to add the cost of ownership. So this car now starts at 1,160,600 rand. Now financing that for a period of 60 months at a prime rate of 11.75%, you're going to be spending about 25,671,000 rand. So if you add the cost of diesel, insurance, a tracker, and those nitty gritties, you're looking at about 30,000 rand every single month, which is honestly a lot of money. But if you use this car or utilize this car the way it's meant to, you'd honestly not going to regret any rand you spend on this car. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and catch you guys on the next video.